I've been in the martial arts since 1977, and I came onto my police department, and nobody wanted to do like law enforcement talks, speaking to the seniors, crime prevention, risk reduction seminars. So I had an interest in doing them, and I started to do them, and that gravitated into other departments using me. That gravitated into me doing lectures and presentations all over the place. And I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of gratification about empowering people with information that I had that they didn't. And that's how it all started. And, you know, if you asked me 10 years ago would I be doing the things I'm doing now, I would have told you probably not, or I didn't know, because they all came about by a passion.
Mm-hmm. Did you start in the traditional arts as a kid, or?
I started in Kyokushin karate in 1977, just out of high school. I was 19 years old. Stayed with that. Got my black belt in Kyokushin/Oyama in 1984. I have a lot of broken bones to show for it, unfortunately. You know, back then it was no pads. I mean, you didn't even go to class unless you were in shape. No pads, full contact, no holds barred. The only thing you couldn't do was punch to the face. Mm-hmm. So I started in that, did that. I had my first child in 1987, 88, and took a little bit of time off, went back and said, wow, this isn't for me. So I began a search trying to find a mixture of arts, or an art that really benefited me for what I was looking for. And so I did some traditional Wing Chun, I did some JKD, I did some kickboxing, I hooked up with an eclectic martial artist that was combining a variety of them. And while I was doing JKD, I was introduced in 1994 to Hicks and Gracie at a seminar, and I actually didn't even know who they were back then. Mm-hmm. So that's how my martial arts still continues today. No, it happens over time, and everybody has a different threshold. Some people pick it up rather quickly. Some people have the mental approach and attitude. But to take a step backwards, one of the biggest part of the things that I do is when we reach the self-defense aspect of safety, everything else is broken down. Your good judgment, your good gift of intuition, your good decision-making. So what we do is we empower women with knowledge and information on how to stay safe. And I show them, I do a lot of media. I've done a lot of investigative media, especially with Inside Edition. I'm a regular guest on Jane Velez Mitchell, CNN, HLN Issues with War on Women. Nancy Grace, I did her show 2 times last week. Prime News with Mike Galanos. The Huckabee Show, Governor Huckabee from Arkansas. And we start with identifying what it is that the predator is looking for in a victim. And a lot of women, believe it or not, if you see on my Facebook page, a young lady at Suffern High School I just did last week, and she walked in with kind of like, geez, I don't know why I'm here, I don't want to be here, and came up to me at the end of the classroom and said, you know, this is not my kind of thing, but you made this so interesting, I learned so much. And I said, well, what's the biggest thing that you walk away with? She said, well, I always perceived, or had the perception, that the predator was some creepy guy that jumped out of the bushes wearing a long trench coat and a mask. And she goes, I now know that's not the truth. And so she went on to say some of the other beneficial things. We see that women in college, I'm a professional speaker as well. I work for Campus Speak, and I lecture across the country on sexual assault prevention, dating violence, date rape, drugs, relationships, domestic abuse, spring break issues, just about everything. And we see in a recent Department of Justice study that came out that 1 out of 4 college-age women are going to be the victim of sexual assault in their 4-year college period. 90% of the time, they're going to know their attacker, and 45% of the times the assault's going to occur on campus. And we're seeing only a 5% number that's actually coming forward and reporting this to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So it's disturbing. It's upsetting. We're not getting the right message out clearly and often enough, and it's causing some hardships. And you know, sexual assault is a crime that stays with you for life. It affects you forever. It affects your immediate family, your extended family, your friends, your coworkers, your students. It's a far-reaching crime. I've investigated a lot of sexual assaults, thousands of crimes against a woman, and so I've seen the long-lasting, lingering effects. Well, interestingly enough, Mike, the women that come to me are typically the non-martial artist type. And generally, something has occurred in their life that has prompted them to seek out me or another self-defense instructor, whether it be something that's happened to them, a family member, a friend, something occurred in their community, something they read about or saw on television, but there's always a reason that they come to you.
Right.
Always a reason.
Are you a big proponent of maybe just mixing like fitness with self-defense in order to bring more women in, or do you kind of rely more on speaking engagements to increase the numbers of women?
I create instructors across the country and around the world. My partner, Brad Parker, was approached by a group of women many years ago, and they were survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, kidnapping, and they said, Brad, we'd like you to develop a program that specifically addresses these issues. So he began teaching them some cool martial arts stuff. He was a longtime martial artist, and he found out two things very quickly. Number one, that they weren't able to retain the techniques in an hour and 15 minutes to a 90-minute class. Number two, he was teaching them how to fight like a man. And he discovered that if you teach a woman how to fight like a man and she goes up against a man, through evolution, genetics, men are usually bigger, stronger, more powerful. And unfortunately, men have this reptilian brain. In other words, if you've seen the true dynamic of a street fight, guy throws a punch, another guy throws a punch. Guy throws a kick, guy throws a kick. Guy bites, it's my turn to bite. So with a woman, we see that if she strikes a man, she's generally going to be hit back 10 times harder. So he reversed his process, and he began teaching the women how to fight like a girl, which became one of our models and one of our modules. And he began using their bigger, stronger, more powerful weapons against the man's more vulnerable points, which would in essence be a center line. And he found it to be very real. He put the women in positions they find themselves in, God forbid, if they were being kidnapped, assaulted, or domestically abused. And he found a high retention rate in the techniques. And we've continually reformed and refined those techniques. A lot of what we do in our instructor program is we teach you how to interact with the student. Because we can count on, if I have a class of 20 women, I know there's going to be one or two survivors in that classroom. And I need to make that environment as comfortable as it possibly can.
Okay.
So that's a big part of our program. Number one, making it real, making it realistic, making it effective, and most importantly, making those women come into that classroom and feeling comfortable. Our mission, and we've never failed, is to make every woman that comes to our doors better on the last day of class than she was on the day she walked in.
Right.
And we've never failed. The average male, in terms of self-defense for himself and being out there,
right,
exercise good judgment.
Okay.
Exercise good judgment. The winner is usually the loser. Most states have what they call a primary aggressor law. And your best bet, I mean, we take with us our martial arts everywhere we go. It's with us. It's in our back pocket. We always have it with us. But if we choose to have to use it, the ramifications, both socially, morally, and legally, can be far extending. So I would say, lose the machoism, lose that kind of manhood thing, and avoid it at all costs. There's times when we can't, and there's laws that protect us, affirmative defenses, to be able to defend ourselves. But if you do get into an encounter and you really hurt the guy, again, even if he starts it with the primary aggressor law, you're going to end up getting arrested. You can be sued civilly, and if you really hurt somebody, you're going to walk around with that for your entire life. So my best bet with my students, and I've had students, unfortunately, that have gotten in street fights and done very well, is to be able to avoid the situation. And don't place yourself. I mean, you're going to be going out to nightclubs where there's a lot of drinking and drugs going on. It's a high-risk situation, and it's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, I just got finished reading Rory Miller's Meditations on Violence. Have you got that? And there was
I read,
there was a section in that about martial artists getting beaten, time and time again by street thugs and everything. And a lot of the advice that has been given on martial arts and self-defense in general to males is just to go out there and learn martial arts, which is shown time and time again to not be the case.
No, what you've got to, and if I look at my 30-year career, and it's funny, there's a gentleman, Tom Kalos. He was doing something similar to what you're doing as well. He was trying to bring the martial arts community together. Real nice man. He's based out of Hawaii, and he goes, I've never been involved in a street fight. I've been a martial artist all my life, and I started thinking, and I actually had a conversation with one of my old partners, and I was like, I never kept tabs, but I got to figure it's got to be somewhere between 250 and 300 encounters. More than probably 24 of those were with people that, if they had the opportunity, would have hurt me real bad or killed me.
Yeah.
So it's good, it's bad. It's good that I never really seriously injured, and it's good that I was able to see what really worked. The jiu-jitsu, for me, I'm 5'7", 155, 160 pounds. So I'm not a big guy. Although I was a striker for many, many years, I broke my hand, I tore the cornea of my eye, I lost my front teeth, I broke ribs, I broke toes. I found that the Gracie system, the jiu-jitsu, for me, being a smaller person, it kind of made everything else go real slow in terms of our encounters. And of course, as we progress in our law enforcement careers, we become even better every year at dealing with people and being able to talk them down. So for me, the jiu-jitsu has made a huge difference because I'm able to subdue an individual. I actually have, I'm a law enforcement trainer, defensive tactics instructor since 1980, and I have a couple tapes out, less than lethal tactics and ground control from law enforcement. And so we teach civilians different than we teach law enforcement. We teach law enforcement differently than we teach women, and we teach women way differently than we teach anybody. So the realism and the truism of a true encounter is quite surprising for a person that's never been involved in that dynamic. And you say combining fitness, really street fights don't last really long enough for you really to kick in your aerobic conditioning. But however, it does help you control with your negative hormones. It does help you control with your recovery time. So being fit and combining fitness with any self-defense program is amazing. I'm a kettlebell instructor, a lot of TRX, a lot of gymnastic rings. I don't touch the weights anymore. Body can't take it. But joint mobility, the kettlebells, the TRX, they've all helped me. I'm no young spring chicken. Number one, being in touch with the good gift of intuition. We're the only human beings out there that don't listen to it. It's kind of like you ever see the deer out in the woods, and you're watching this deer, this fawn, moving around, eating, grazing, and it goes behind a tree, and you move and you step on a twig, and the deer hears you. It's not waiting around to see what that danger or potential danger might be. And often we see, I'll give you an example. I went out to a college campus, and I was with Inside Edition, and I was wearing, dressed down. I had this Boston Celtics hat on. My son was real upset. He's a Yankee, a Boston Red Sox hat on, and my son's a Yankee fan. So when he saw that on TV, he got quite upset with me. And my job was to see women walking off the college campus. This has never been done in the country before because it's not good to show this on for financial reasons for the institution. And I had a good relationship with this particular college, and they allowed me to do this. And I identified soft targets walking out of the classroom. I was looking for girls that were on their cell phone. I was looking for girls that were texting, eating their lunch, just completely engaged in what a beautiful day it was. Those were the women that I flagged down. And I got 8 girls in a row in less than 45 seconds to invite me into their car and drive off. And the producers, the investigative reporter, Matt Mahar, we were like, they were blown away. They couldn't believe how easy it was. So the greatest gift is listening to that first choice. How many times I've heard a woman say, I thought the guy was a creep, but I felt something was odd, but I've done this 100 times. And so I think the most important thing is that we can do is put them in touch with that good gift of intuition. If you believe you're in danger, you are. If you believe that you're walking into a bad situation, it likely is. And if you feel that you're in danger, you probably are. Well, I'm a big proponent of people carrying some type of weapon, but the most important thing and most important information I can give you with regard to that is I don't care if it's pepper spray or a bazooka. You got to practice with it. If you don't practice with it, it's worthless. I've seen police officers forget that they've had pepper spray. I've seen police officers forget that they've had the tasers. I've seen officers, that when that heart rate gets up to 175 beats per minute, you get that tunnel vision. It's not a good time to be able to reach into your pocketbook and grab that pepper spray that's been at the bottom of your pocketbook for the last 3 months. You got to take it out. You got to be familiar with it. It's got to be a reaction versus an action. If you got to think about it, it's too late. So it's got to be something just like as we do in the martial arts, repetition over time. Perfect practice makes perfect. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And as long as you practice with the weapon of choice, you're going to be that much better with it. You're going to be able to employ it during a time of crisis. I also suggest to my female students, have a plan for everything. It doesn't have to be perfect. Have a blueprint that you can go to. And I actually challenge them. I'll bring up women in my lectures and my classes, and I'll ask them, I say, well, where do you go shopping? I go to the Galleria, I go to Paramus Mall, whatever it might be. And I say, well, will you spend your money, your parents' money, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, listen, you're coming from the store to your car. And here, turn around a quick second. And I put my hand around their neck, and I say, listen, I got a knife. Do what I say, I'm going to kill you. And I let like 4 or 5 seconds go. And even though I'm a safe person in a controlled environment, I often feel them starting to, their breathing increase. They start to tighten up. And I'm like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I'm going to do whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the worst things you can actually do is if you're approached by a stranger and you're taken from the primary to the secondary crime scene, it's more than a 90% chance that you're not coming back. It's unforgiving. Like in John Gardner's case, if you followed the Chelsea King and Amber Dubois case out of San Diego, California, he was arrested for sexual assault on a young lady, went to jail, did time. And in his mind, he wasn't going to leave any victims alive, and he ended up murdering Chelsea King and Amber Dubois. And so there are key essential things that women aren't aware of that we need to tell them it's okay to scream, yell, not be polite. So what if you want to embarrass yourself? You'll never see these people again. The more important thing is to stay safe. Exactly.
Well, how many, what percentage of the time do you teach them about guns and knives, or do you just load them up with the basics and tell them to use their good judgment?
Well, we have a weapons for women's class. Now, here in New York, it's very difficult to get a concealed carry permit. I mean, you basically have to be a retired police officer, or you've got to have like $40,000 in receipts in your business. So Brad does a weapons for women, and it's basically we employ the same, whether you're holding keys or whether you're holding a Kubotan or whether you're holding a stick, whatever. It's the same pattern of strikes. And then he employs weapons with the weapons for women. He uses the simunitions with the weapons, so he makes it real live. We have a defense against weapons course, which is not designed to be a disarming class. Rather, it's designed, if the killing starts, you got to stop it. So we teach techniques that when you're about to be killed, here's what you got to do. Maybe the last thing you ever do, but this is the only thing that's going to save your life. Well, again, we'll go back to the primary aggressor law. I mean, typically, almost in every state, you're obliged to retreat unless you're in your home or in some cases your place of employment. Or then we have the affirmative defense of that you can't flee and you've got to defend yourself. Now, the bad thing with an affirmative defense is that you're saying, okay, yeah, I did the assault, but here's the reason why.
Right.
So, do what you have to. I'd rather be, judged by 12 than carried by 6 is the old saying.
Yeah. And
listen, don't let any law. There's some people out there that they give the laws of the state of New York. Well, let me tell you, you want to read Article 35, and I lecture on Article 35 use of force for police officers when I was teaching in the police academy. It's complicated.
Yeah.
There's laws for civilians, there's law for police officers, there's laws for civilians, and there's so many variations of those laws. It's hard to understand. Basically, if you can retreat. If you can't, use only that much force that is necessary to either stop his aggression or for you to remove yourself from the scene. Yeah, I think that in general, typically we look at women. I guess people perceive them as the weaker sex. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's not the case. But because they are of smaller stature, they are weaker. They are feminine. We look at an assault upon them as much more serious than an assault on a male. Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a lot of it's an interesting question because I could go into a whole other topic. But online learning, I think, is great once you reach a certain level. I don't think it's good for a beginner. You don't have a corrective process. I was on the instructor program with the Gracies back started in 1994, went through until about 2000, and they were completely against it. They're doing it today. Things do change. But in other words, if when we see video people that have come as beginners and learned off of tapes, they have more holes in their game than Swiss cheese. And I don't care if it's ping pong, basket weaving, or there's very few people that have that unique talent, distinct ability to capture the unique techniques. I work with every one of my students, every one of my female students, every one of my jiu-jitsu students, every one of my combat submission wrestling students, because when I feel them doing something wrong, I can correct it. A good jiu-jitsu, a good martial artist, to be able to look across the room and say, no, 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 move your hand here, you know, just this little bit, and it'll make the difference, the world of difference. So my students are constantly educating themselves and watching videos and reading books, but they've reached a certain level of accomplishment. For people that are beginners, the beginner videos that are out there, like take the Gracie Basics, awesome reference to go to. But you should have a legitimate course of study in which you have an instructor that you can at least on a weekly basis visit. Learning online for a beginner, I'm not a big proponent of it. I drink my Dunkin' Donuts in the car now. I love to read. I often don't have time to read. I love to spend time with amazing people, good people, people that I admire, people that I respect, people that I can learn from, people that I can teach. I love doing the media. The media forces me to do research that I probably otherwise wouldn't be doing. I speak on just about every major case that's going on in the country today. And it helps me be a better instructor. It helps me be a better women's empowerment instructor. It helps me be a better jiu-jitsu instructor, because it's easier to stay out of trouble than it is to get out of trouble. And the more knowledge and information that I have, it's better for me as an instructor. People say, do you see a therapist? Do you see a psychiatrist? You deal with all this? You've investigated. I'm like, no, I don't. I just look at it in a positive way. It gives me something more that I can bring back to my students. I love the beach. I love to travel. I do travel across the country. This past fall, I was in Montana, New Mexico, San Diego, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Chicago, several courses in New York, Salisbury, Maryland. I might be missing one or two. But I do love to travel. It's a joy meeting different people. And again, one of the most important things I really enjoy is empowering people with information and knowledge that I have that they don't. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you on Skype anyway, and
Yeah.
I like what you're doing. It's good. I'm going to take a deeper look at your site, and it's a good thing, trying to bring the martial arts community together. It should be that way, and often it's not. There's too many egos. There's too many different perspectives that, you know, your stuff doesn't work, mine is the best. Well, you have to have an open mind. You've got to examine everything. You got to believe in what you do, but have an open mind and at least explore other things.